I'm gonna not
Weird
share.
line.
I'll just have my video. I don't really have anything to share. Screen noise. Yes. Okay. So I guess right now our grand audience is who's first in. Is that a person in the Hangout? Must be first. And yes,
Hey,
hey first. You and then Smiley must be watching from the YouTube link. If you have any questions, just write it in the eDollar chat. Then I can just sit and watch that and talk and stuff.
well, last time we had like a brief session with Conrad, so it was like a 30-minute slot. It's also, I suppose, easier to watch, instead of like a 2 hour and a half session. So maybe we can make shorter, especially since it's a demo. I go through it and then just chill.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there really isn't that much to show anyway. I'll just talk a little bit about okay, so the voting stuff, right? So that's what I've been working on. Basically, been in New York for a week now, and I've been working at the Bitcoin Center, and together with Nikolai, trying to deploy some testing networks and stuff. And it's not too easy to get Ethereum to work just yet, but hopefully that's different. That'll change now with Olympic, the actual beginning of the frontier testnet and all that. So hopefully we can start actually testing on live network and everything now. So yeah, there hasn't really been that much development done yet, but I've pretty much found out the structure I want the DAO to have, like from a governance perspective. At least my best idea for it right now, which is, well, what I've been working on in like pseudocode and just like trying to flesh out. So the idea is that there will be, like the idea is that there should not be, the voting and the governance should primarily be off the blockchain. So it should be done like in the community, and then the contract itself and the blockchain is only used for voting when like something when something bad basically happens. So like when a delegate needs to get kicked out and be replaced. So it's more of like a defensive mechanism or like a last resort thing that should be done. This way, it doesn't have to be that like we can use more user-friendly systems for voting and polling and that kind of stuff, and when doing day-to-day governance, and then the contract will only be for when there is like, yeah, I mean when it's like outrage or something, because that's really the only time you can mobilize people on the internet en masse, is like when you have something they're pissed about, then you can actually like spread the message and get people to start a program and start voting and use their coins and that kind of stuff. But it could be dangerous if we rely too much on that, because in general most people, they will not be interested in voting, they'll just be interested in speculating and makercoin most likely. So yeah, so the way it will work is, what I'm thinking is that we'll have these, like we vote, there are like 7 permissions. Let me just have a look at the code stuff here. There's the most important one, which is the set keeper permission in the coin contract, which is the function in a coin contract that decides which contract has all the permissions to manipulate it directly. So that function can be used for the keeper contract, for like maker's contract to upgrade itself to an entirely new contract. And then there is like set collateral requirement, set the forced cover rate, set the hard call rate. Like these are all what I call security parameters that are meant to ensure that the system doesn't become under-collateralized. And it should probably, like, that's something that should not be changed very often or at all, and only really be changed over time the system starts really growing and liquidity increases dramatically, and like either liquidity and either volatility becomes much better. They will also need, like, that's not even put in yet because the multiple collateral system isn't even implemented yet. But once that comes in, there will also be handling the multiple types of collateral will also be a part of these 3 permissions. So there will be like collateral requirement for each type of collateral, and forced cover rate for each type of collateral, and hard call rate for each type of collateral.
Is it for a pair of assets, or is it just for the collateral type?
Just for the collateral side, yeah.
Okay.
Because like it only collateralizes eDollar itself, right? And then all the other. Yeah, but they should all be collateralized by eDollar then.
Oh, really? You don't think it should be?
That's the.
Well, I was just thinking like you just for each asset you say yes or no. Can this collateralize it?
You mean from the user point of view?
No, just for from the actual system how it works. Like you should allow whoever decides what collateral is valid should be allowed to say that.
Yeah, so there could actually be multiple. Okay, that's actually a good point. So yeah, we could also have multiple collateral for the other e-assets actually while we're at it. So in addition to allowing them to be collateralized by eDollar, which is probably what most people want to collateralize with because that's what's easy to do remarketing with. Like if you collateralize, if you use Ether or anything like that to collateralize eDollar, then you're most likely speculating on the price of the collateral you're collateralizing with. Whereas when you use eDollar and when you issue some e-asset or something else, then you're most likely speculating on that e-asset you're issuing. Yeah, so there's that, and then there's the set the feed source. So like the delegate contract that can set the feed source and decide which contract is called whenever someone updates the feed. So that's really important. And then there is withdraw Ether and withdraw eDollar from the keeper contract itself, which is important, like which is required for when the keeper contract does forced covers and margin calls. Then there will be like a profit from that, and that needs to be distributed or used in some way. Additionally, later on, once there's income from staking and that kind of stuff, that income will also go to the keeper contract, and then will also be controlled by delegates in this way. And then finally, there's the forced cover, so like the ability to perform forced covers, which is probably the most important ability in the short run. It's the only thing that will really be used in the beginning, because that's what will be used to maintain the proper collateral ratio of the system and maintain liquidity and all that stuff. So this is how many? 7, actually 8. Okay, so it's 8. This is like 8 different types of permissions, and then the idea is that each permission will have an associated, well, delegate, or like what I think of calling like a dynasty or something like that, like a contract that then chooses the delegate in a more in like from the delegates basically, and then the idea is that this contract will continuously update delegate contract whenever the delegate contract, like the delegates that are currently in charge of that contract, they decide that this is what the shareholders want through off-chain polling and off-chain voting. And then if everything goes as it should, then there will never be any, like it will never actually be needed to update the delegate contract, because the delegates should always just conform to what the voters want. And it should be really easy to figure that out, right? Because that's just a matter of reading signed messages, like messages that are signed by users who can prove they own a certain amount of makercoin. Using that, it should be possible to to figure out exactly how much support and exactly what the shareholder sentiment is for, like the makercoin or maker sentiment or whatever is for a given proposal or value of a given parameter and so on. And then whenever that's like it's decided that that stuff should be updated, then the contract will just the dynasty will update itself. Like the contract that's right above the keeper contract will then point to a new like third layer contract, and then continuously just update that. And then if something goes wrong, like if it doesn't conform to what the makercoin owners wanted to do, then they will go to the keeper contract and vote them out by voting in a new dynasty contract. And then there'll also be like some security features built into voting in both places. So like when the keeper contract itself has the priming delay for its voting, so when someone votes, when a new contract, like when a new dynasty contract gets a higher dynasty, I don't know how to pronounce it, dynasty or dynasty? Dynasty. Right, so when a new dynasty contract like gets more votes than the old one, then it doesn't instantly gain the permissions. It only gains it only becomes possible to prime it, and then when you prime it, then you have to wait the priming delay, and then after the priming delay is over, then you can execute it, and then you can like instate it as the one that gains the permissions. However, it should be possible for the voters, like if the incumbent dynasty contract is like going rogue or something and is currently priming something that's going to destroy the system, then it will be possible to like it'll be possible to have like a suppressive dynasty contract or something like a contract that the moment it is primed, then it instantly shuts off the permission for the incumbent contract. So it doesn't get the permission itself, but it does become like it does shut off the permissions of the other contract. So all permissions for this particular thing will basically be off until the new dynasty contract is able to be instated. And then of course the idea is that the dynasty contracts themselves need to have priming delays for choosing new delegate contracts, and the delegate contracts will have priming delays for executing the stuff they can with their permissions. So every step of like every action that can be taken will have the priming delay inbuilt. So there'll always be security, and it'll never happen that suddenly the system just collapses. So yeah. Could I go through a case example following this governance scheme? Yeah, so let's say actually like the interesting thing is it's gonna, when it starts out this system, then because the distribution is going to be super centralized, then it won't really make much, like the voting won't really make much sense because it will all be controlled by Nexus, by those who own all the maker coins at first. So actually the way I imagine it will play out at first is basically that me and other people who are like other developers and people who are involved in, we will be the ones who control the dynasty contracts at first, also because we have the most votes, so we will be able to vote ourselves in anyway. But then over time, as we divest and the distribution becomes decentralized, the voting will probably stay the same at first anyway, because you can probably count on us being incentivized to work like towards to optimize the system and then work correctly for the, like as the coin, the shareholders see it. So like over time we might actually, the people who initially control the dynasty contracts will willingly give up power if necessary. Like if it turns out through polling that the shareholders want this to happen, then we will willingly like have the dynasty contract control a new, like give its permissions to a new delegate contract that are controlled by a new set of delegates. But then, for instance, if at some point it becomes clear that the shareholders are not interested in choosing this new set of delegates, which again, like these delegates will be like, it's hard actually to say it right now what they will be, because really it will just be like a contract that will be controlled however we find out is most beneficial to do it. And initially it's probably just gonna be like me basically that has like direct control, but with a priming delay. So like it'll be controlled by me, but I will not be able to do anything without the priming delay at first. And then over time, as the system becomes more complex and we need more efficient governance and more transparent governance, then we'll start having multi-sig for it. So like the delegate contracts will be multi-sig contracts. And there will also be like hard limits in a delegate contract that decides, for instance, if it wants to change some parameters, there is like a hard limit that simply cannot be surpassed. There cannot be like changed, unless an entirely new contract is voted in, or like chosen through the dynasty contract or something like that. But then, if at some point, let's say I suddenly don't want to, like suddenly it becomes clear for the shareholders that I'm not acting the way shareholder sentiment wants me to act, then even if I can see this and it's proven and it's obvious, then I might not necessarily give up the power I have over the dynasty contract because suddenly I decide I know better or something like that. And then that is a scenario where basically like a grassroots effort will have to organize to basically suppress my dynasty contract and then elect a new one and then like begin a new line of delegate contracts that start off with this initial contract that is chosen by the voters that then updates itself according to how it according to how the people who control it see shareholder sentiment. So it's kind of like the traditional political systems work, or traditional companies work, where day-to-day stuff and even like medium-term and long-term stuff is controlled by management. But if management really does badly, then the shareholder meetings are what ultimately decides who controls what, and they have the ultimate power to fire everyone and completely change the power structure and the governance system. Yeah, this is this is something I should probably make. Yeah, I'll probably maybe after this hangout I can like try to draw something and show it off a little bit. I'm still not fully decided that this is not entirely sure this will be the final way to do it, because maybe there'll still come up some better way of dealing with it. But generally, my thoughts are that the important thing is that we should have it should be like the voting we should not rely on the blockchain voting, and it should only be used to like prevent bad things from happening, because that's the only time it's really possible to rally voters in this way. Like that's the only time where you see because that's where you get like outcry on the forums, and everyone in the hive mind will agree that this is bad, because it's pretty easy to agree on when someone is being a dick, whereas it can be very difficult to agree when something is the best to do and so on. So that's where more complicated voting systems are required, and where like it'll be better to have like a more like a system that is done off the chain, basically, where it's more where people and the vote will be simple. Also won't cost transaction fees.
There's a question in the chat room.
Yes. The shareholders and delegates all exist as part of Nexus. Well, so Nexus is actually has like changed meaning now, for me at least. I've talked about this with some people, but so this is actually something I wanted to announce today, basically. Because of the Ripple stuff and yeah, because of other like opinions I've gotten from people, then it might not be safe to have like a company actually owning the makercoins, and the initial distribution should be decentralized and anonymous to keep the entire system safe. Because basically, it seems like from the Ripple case that like that if you are like a company that issues a coin, then you are responsible for tracking all users of that coin, and you're responsible for doing KYC every time you sell your coin. So, of course, that's not something that would be possible to really enforce on Nexus if it was created and distributed the coins and all that stuff. But what would probably happen is that Nexus would be vulnerable to having all these assets seized if suddenly the regulators they decided that this is bad and they want to clamp down on it. So, so what I'm now calling Nexus is more like the initial group of people who own the makercoin first, and then who provide liquidity. And yeah, this will not be done on the chain because providing liquidity cannot be done on the chain because it has to be provided on centralized exchanges because that's where that's what users know how to use. Basically, it's more going to be like I'm planning to go to Southeast Asia, somewhere more or less off the grid, like somewhere where at least in the medium term, short to medium term, there's not really a chance of like suddenly getting really harsh cryptocurrency regulation or like KYC requirements and people issuing coins. And we see, like, there are many jurisdictions in that area where, like, for instance, Singapore, where banks and the authorities generally seem very favorable towards cryptocurrency. So there will not, like, there won't be this company Nexus Trading registered anywhere that owns a part of the coins and systematically sells them off. Instead, it will be like, basically, it will be anonymous. It will not be public who owns what amount of makercoins. They will be like put on a blockchain in a bunch of addresses that are controlled by people, but it will not be public who these people are, in order to like protect the system from seizure, basically. And then over time, it will be every single one of these initially distributed makercoins. They will be sold off on EtherX, like so, and that will be provable because it will be possible to see on the blockchain when they're held and when they're sold off. The idea is that there shouldn't be like I talked about before. There shouldn't be like a Satoshi stash sitting somewhere with like a huge amount of the votes or a huge amount of the coins being owned by some single entity. So over time, all of them will be sold off, preferably as fast as possible to maximize decentralization. And then these funds raised from this will still be used for liquidity. However, they will also be work done towards getting a company set up in Europe doing proper market making. This company will just not own makercoins and sell makercoins to raise funds, because that's like the tricky part. That's what is dangerous. That was what was dangerous from the current way Nexus was thought of.
It shouldn't even be an official purpose of selling the coins.
No, yeah, it should not be to.
Yeah.
The reason why the code, yeah, that's actually a good point. So this is like, but the good thing is, as long, like, the real problem is basically like legal security, more or less. Most likely my legal security personally. I mean, what would really the most likely outcome if the regulators decided to that makercoin is illegal or something. If they suddenly decided that, then most likely what will happen is like I'd get arrested and then all my assets would be seized or something like that. And this would probably be Like this is only really likely in a Western jurisdiction, and only really likely if I am if I'm doing these things, like I'm selling the coins systematically to raise funds for liquidity and that kind of stuff. So that's why instead it will be distributed anonymously to a group of people who will control it and sell it off and distribute it further. And then, yeah, basically try to get the distribution as decentralized as possible over time. But, that's actually a really well done effect. It actually stayed on relatively stable. Yeah. So Nexus is now like a diffuse term that doesn't really mean that much. What it means is like anonymous group of people who hold the initial distribution. And the people who showed interest in buying some makercoins, I will basically get back to you after this, and then explain what to do under this new system. And basically, the way, like the only place makercoin will ever be sold, at least from Nexus, will be on EtherX for eDollar. So it will never be sold for fiat. It will never touch the traditional financial system or anything like that. And then another thing is, over time, once we're able to do it, then we want to have the bridge, like the thing that powers the eDollar to Bitcoin conversion on the front ends, like in the UI, is initially going to be Shapeshift, right? And it's going to run through Emacs, the exchange, like our primary exchange, that now will still, like there will still be liquidity on Emacs, and I will still handle a substantial amount of that liquidity. But there will not be like an official entity like Nexus providing liquidity there. And over time, we want to have the bulk of liquidity basically put up in a system that is like in a jurisdiction that is not in risk of getting of like regulatory clampdown. So maybe like having a Shapeshift-like service that we make ourselves, that we have sitting in Singapore or something like that will then handle Bitcoin to eDollar conversion. And that should be very safe because it's possible. It's relatively easy to set it up so you have eDollar and then Bitcoin that is immune to seizure. And it won't even be possible to like have like a single, like you won't even really need a legal entity to own them. So it won't be like there won't really be any single thing to like track down in order to seize that money. Other than me, of course. I'm gonna be the scapegoat, but there's not really anything to do about that now at this point. The important thing is just that once the system just gets a little bit going and like becomes decentralized, then we want to be 100% sure that it's completely like immune to regulatory attacks or the whims of governments or the US whatever Federal Bureau of whatever they want. Yeah, that's the new plan for that. Yeah, well, that's my plan for staying safe is basically that I'm gonna go to Southeast Asia, and then like run it from there, I guess. I'd like Denmark is also pretty safe and very safe actually. I don't think there'll be a very big chance of anything happening. I also still don't think that. I mean, the Ripple case is not really that big, like an issue, because it's still only the U.S. and then it's still to be expected that the U.S. is going to be a lot stricter than Europe or Isle of Man or something. But I've actually said it before, right, in other Hangouts, that I think that in the long run, there's probably going to be many jurisdictions that are going to ban eDollar outright, and all stablecoins in that regard, like China, for instance, and probably Argentina, Russia, and maybe more other countries like that. Seems like India is also starting to get a little bit pissed about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So over time, like if these countries are already not happy with Bitcoin, they're going to be really, really unhappy with stablecoins. And one of the ways they could like try to not just ban them, but actually like go after the system would be to like try to use like legal means to do like make a big KYC mess out of something, right? My biggest fear is that somehow like if somehow like makercoin ends up getting deemed a stock in Western jurisdictions, and then in order for it to be legally like to legally work or whatever, um, then then you'd have to do KYC on every single person who owns them, because that's what you have to do with stocks. And then that would be like a window from which the regular, like from the same system that is used to keep track of everyone who owns makercoin could then also be used to, like, could be extended to keep track of everyone who owns eDollar. And then eDollar just became completely useless. That's why I'm just going to be proactive and basically not stay in a Western jurisdiction where these rules are strictly enforced. Okay, how are delegates selected? They are reviewed because they determine by proportion of holding makercoin holders and others. So first of all, delegates are not people. Delegates are contracts. So like a delegate contract could itself be a contract that is controlled by voting. It could even be a contract that's controlled by like democratic, where like there's like a group of people who just vote with one vote per person, and then when there's a majority, then they do some action, something like that. Like the idea is that this should be as flexible as possible. Like I don't even know. Maybe we should actually call delegates, like call it the actual people in charge of controlling the system as delegates, and then we just have the delegate contracts that designate the delegates or something like that. But that's still like haven't even properly determined that yet. But like the actual contract, like the physical control, if you could say it like that, of the contract, the physical permissions in the code in the blockchain are selected by whoever has the most votes from the owners of makercoin. So if there's a contract that has 20% of all votes for the permission for the, let's say the forced cover permission, and there's no, like the second most contract only has 15%, then the contract with the 20% votes is the one that has those permissions. And then those permissions, then it can be exercised in different ways. Like for instance, the forced cover permissions will probably be, that's probably something where we want to have several people to independently be able to basically perform a forced cover whenever they want. Because a forced cover is something that's not really that dangerous, and it's more like a maintenance thing. So that would be like, and then that would be like the kind of employees that we will basically have that will be controlled in this delegate contract. And then we could have another, like we could have let's say the set keeper delegate. The set keeper delegate is most likely going to be like an empty contract that it cannot be controlled at all. That's just empty and not doing anything. And then only in the very, like in the case where like further out in the future where we want to upgrade the keeper contract, then like the voters will first have to vote in a delegate that is able to upgrade the keeper contract, and then then once the delegate that is able to do this is voted in, like the contract that can do that is voted in, then that contract executes the set keeper function and then designates an entirely new keeper contract. So yeah, like I said before, actual voting on the blockchain should, as far like as much as it's possible, should be only done for either for emergencies or for like big things such as upgrading the keeper contract. And then yeah, make your coin holders are not as anonymous as possible. So delegates will not be anonymous because, well, they can be. That's actually, I mean, who knows? Who knows what is preferable? It kind of depends on the legal environment, because like if the legal environment is good and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any crackdown on a delegate, then you definitely want delegates you like where you know the real world identity of, because then it's easier to determine how much you can trust them. But it's also useful to have anonymous delegates, of course. However, with the security parameters, like the margin call rates and that kind of stuff, it's not really going to matter that much like who the delegates are. It's more like they will be more like proposals, basically, because the delegate contracts that control the security parameters will be voted in based on their hard boundaries for how much or how high or how low their parameters can go. Yes, that's really. I'm gonna make like a graphic of it. I realize I should have made this before now because it's super complicated. That we have like I can try to like visualize it with my hands, kind of like we have the coin contract here, right? That's like the base layer, basically. That's at the bottom, and that's where the coin, like the eDollars are that move around, and that's where the collateral is, and that's basically the entire thing. That contract itself has like permissions that can only be like has functions that control every aspect of it. That can only be controlled by the keeper contract, which is one layer above, which is where the makercoin resides and where the voting resides. And this keeper contract then has direct permissions to the contract below it, but it itself does not use those direct permissions. It votes in other contracts that get those permissions. And then those are the ones, like that's the third layer, that's the dynasty contract, which is like the contract that then again has the permissions but doesn't use them directly. Instead, what it does is it controls delegate contracts on top and then keeps controlling new delegate contracts again and again. Whenever it wants to update what it can do. And then if it suddenly like the dynasty contract is centrally controlled, you could say, like it's a centralized thing. It's not controlled by the makercoin holders. It's controlled by the delegates and those in control of it, but with a priming delay, of course. And then if it behaves badly, then the layer below can basically kick it out and then vote in something new with voting directly. Yes, so I'll try to draw that, make it a little bit more easy to understand. Any feedback? Anything? I'll just show off what I got from Ola. It's really strange why he didn't show up. I talked to him just like 20 minutes ago. Like 20 minutes before we started.
Different. Sometimes it screws things up.
Yeah, but he's here in New York too. Like I literally spoke to him 20 minutes before the hangout started, and he said he was gonna come online. So something must have stopped him. Anyway, so this is what he. Oh, I'm gonna share this. That one. This one. This is what he's come up with so far. This is like basically like this thing I already showed off. The front end, where up here you have this is like the receive box, kind of like your account information, and then the idea is you can have multiple accounts here if you have multiple Ethereum accounts, and then there'll be the name here. Like if you have a registered name on Ethereum, the name will be here, and then there will be the Bitcoin address will be afterwards. It's like the Shapeshift address that is generated from Shapeshift. And then every Ethereum address will have a corresponding Bitcoin address from Shapeshift all the way down, like no matter how many accounts you have. So you can always receive Bitcoin as eDollar to any one of your accounts. And then over here it's supposed to show the eDollar and then the Ether balances. And then there's total balance over here. So like to make it easy to see, give a quick overview. And the send menu is the same as before. We put in you put in Bitcoin address or Ethereum address or Ethereum name, and then you just type in what you want to send, like the amount you want to send, and then you can choose whether it should be eDollar or Ether or Bitcoin. So you can also actually send Ether with the eDollar front end if you want to. I mean, that's like an obvious thing that should be in it. There's no reason why the eDollar wallet shouldn't also be usable as an Ether wallet. And then there's the transaction history down here, which is also it's both a transaction history for incoming and outgoing transactions, and also like a confirmation dialog for the transactions you're sending. Like after you say send transaction, it'll have like the transaction will instantly go down here, and then the status will update over here with like the confirmations and the status from Shapeshift if you're sending to a Bitcoin address. Yes. So that's. If anyone has any comments to this, I'm gonna post it in the chat.
I'd have one suggestion at the bottom where you have the transaction history. If there would be an easy way to filter, like maybe you're looking for a sending transaction, for example, just have a quick way.
That's a good idea. That should definitely be that.
Yeah.
And also it should be possible to like sort.
Hmm.
The one issue there is actually that I'm thinking if you use it, like this could be really, really long, and I was thinking that you'd only want to like load the most recent ones, and then at the bottom have like a button you click and then you load more or something like that.
Well, eventually you have like a server that connects that sort of.
But this can actually
encrypt your upload like an encrypted version of your wallet that has like.
So we have a server that processes this and then send it to the user.
Yeah, they're like, give me the transaction history for this user, this from here to here, to get to this date. Because like ideally this whole thing's running in a browser, so it's not going to be able to, scan everyone's.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Although I think some of the log stuff is supposed to be indexed, so maybe you actually can do that.
You can put in like in Solidity there is like a login command thing.
No, yeah,
that's useless. I don't actually know how that works. I still have to look into how the thing works. Okay. If there's any suggestions or any stuff regarding to this, then please chat room.
I think you covered your mic or something. I can't hear you anymore.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better.
I guess this is my mic. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, that was where I was holding. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, if anyone has any feedback or suggestions, or especially feedback about the front end, and requests for what they want to see in it, then go to the eDollar chat room, gitter.im/ethereumbuilders/eDollar, which is basically where the eDollar community lives. So yeah, I guess that's it.
Thank you for the session, man. The front end is starting to look sexy. Quite an improvement since the first UI you showed with the buttons and all that.
Yeah, the Bootstrap one. Yeah. Next week, hopefully, I will have it working with, actually working, so it has the Web3 backend stuff and updating itself, and it's able to get balances from the blockchain and that kind of stuff. So that's one of the things we can look at next week.
Awesome. So until next week.
Right. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Oh, I was still sharing my screen.
Okay, bye, man.
Thanks, everyone, for watching. Bye-bye.